good morning. The world is even worse mess than it was yesterday. And one can tell because all you've got to do is to look at the newspaper front pages. Now, we've got ethics advisors to the Prime Minister quitting. For God's sake, it's Westminster. There's no such thing as ethics. How dare they pick up a salary for being ethics advisor, let alone quit, and quit for political purposes? It's outrageous, absolutely outrageous. And I, for one, am getting absolutely fed up with the way that we are dominated, not by dickheads, because they don't know how to dominate. They are all at sea. They're completely lost. And that is not only in governance, but it's in the church, it's in the corporate sector, it's in the charity sector. Every sector that you care to name we are in the hands of dickheads. And why? Because one series of dickheads hands over to another series of dickheads. Sensible people don't get a chance to get involved. I am outraged this morning by O2. They are bigger dickheads than the other dickheads. Let me say this before I go on to O2. A nation of small shopkeepers. That's the way we were described as we clawed our way to an empire and became the most powerful nation on the face of the earth. A nation of small shopkeepers. And it stood us in good stead. Now we've gone to corporate governance, sprawling empires, dominated not by the dickheads who have got the titles, but by computers and all the nonsense that they bring. And how we can expect to have a civilized way of life, a good way of life, an economy in shape, a government in shape, education in shape, health in shape, transport in shape, or any other shape. I have no idea why we have such a realization, because the generation in charge are completely and utterly incompetent. Now, let me give you an example, right? O2, right? A sprawling network of mobile phones and phone services, electronic services, and you name it. And we've got shops and we sell phones and we do, it's a sprawling empire. So I make a call yesterday and it won't go through. I try again. I try to call somebody to say, my phone's not working. Won't go through. The phone has been cut off. Now, why has it been cut off? My bank shows that the tariff was paid. I've not been given any warning that it didn't go through. In fact, it shows it's left my bank account well over 10 days ago. But it's been cut off. How do I get through to business? Well, I can't on the mobile phone because it's been cut off. Go to a landline. It's bloody 7 o'clock at night. How do I go to a landline? So actually, I spend, because I can't get in touch with this company or its agents, I spend an evening not having any phone service. How costly is that to me? I have no idea, none whatsoever. But then this morning, very early, I can get to a phone, a landline. But they don't start work until 8 o'clock. No, they don't start work until 8 o'clock. But even then, I get through on the landline to 2 corporate numbers. And what it does is it tells me how I can pay if I know how much I owe. Well, I owe nothing as far as I'm concerned. I want to talk to somebody. Oh, talk to somebody? And anyway, trying to find those numbers is a nightmare. The phone companies treat as an absolute secret how to get hold of them by phone. They don't like their own instrument. They don't like their own service. They don't like their own product. That's how crazy it is. Am I through yet? No. No. Because I keep on getting press 1, press 2, press 3. And a recorded voice, which doesn't listen to me. It doesn't know what I want. And it tries to ship me off in some direction, which is totally irrelevant to the case in point. O2, you are a disgrace. You are a complete, utter disgrace. And I suspect that the other giants, big business in the telecoms area, are also a disgrace. They are none of them any better. They have forgotten what service is about. They've forgotten that they need to talk to their customers. And they've forgotten that if the computer says jump, they should question why they jump, not just slavishly follow. O2, you are a disgrace as a company. Oh, glossy brochures, a big website. Oh, yes, and advertising that shows how caring you are. Well, you're not. You're not caring a bit. And you didn't care that you left a vulnerable 82-year-old pensioner all night without any means of communication to the outside. You are bloody lucky that nothing serious happened to me, because I would have sued the hell out of you. But you know, the big problem is it's our mindset in Britain. It's got to be big. We had a terrific health service, a terrific NHS that worked extremely well. Oh, it had a glitch here and a glitch there. But generally speaking, it was pretty good. So what did we do? We made it bigger and bigger, but not better and not better. And now nobody can get hold of their doctor. Nobody can get the right advice. We've got people, a case in point of a man who needed an ambulance, and was left lying on the floor and eventually died. It's a disgrace. And what do we worry about? Ethics. For God's sake, get your finger out, stop the ethics, and get down to the minutiae of daily life in this country. That's what we want, is we want people to look after our daily life. I just read this morning, the only news, local news, is that there are X number of houses going to be, that's the headline, X number of 179 houses or something to be built. Social housing. But actually, when you read into the headline, these are going to be refurbished. Those are in the planning. Those we thought about. And we've come up with a magic number. What bullshit do we have to put up with? It is incredible. And we put up with it. We put up with it all the time. I clashed with my good friend and colleague, Stuart Dolby, yesterday, because he took the exact opposite viewpoint to me on the Rwanda refugee issue. My view is that everybody is against it on moral grounds. Why? Because it's in Black Africa. Oh, any other reason? No, Rwanda is seen as a jewel in the African continent. It's forward-looking, it's developing. And the hotel that these refugees were going to be sent to is, I wouldn't mind staying at for a couple of weeks. But, you can't send them to Rwanda? Why? When you strip away everything, it's because it's Black Africa. Oh, we're not discriminatory. Oh, bend the knee. Do this, do that. For God's sake, when are we going to wake up and realize that we are institutionally racist? And it's going to take generations to get rid of it, instead of all this pettifogging. It's outrageous what's happened to this country and what is happening to this country. And it's not all the fault of the central government. It goes back years and years and years where we experimented with our educational system. Nobody can read anymore. Nobody can write. Nobody wants to. The main occupation of educationalists is trying to find ways of finding out if PhD candidates have just copied stuff directly from the web. What have we become? Where have we got to? Ah, dearie, dearie, dearie me. It's absolutely bloody outrageous. I enjoyed that. But everything I just said, to me, is real. And I really think it's time for us to stop pouncing around, to get to grips with what life is really all about, to have leaders who are prepared to get their fingernails dirty, instead of worrying about whether somebody had a beer and a meal when he shouldn't have during lockdown, or whether a party took place and an iced cake was presented during lockdown when it shouldn't. God, we made a meal of that, and we continue to make a meal of it, while all sorts of other things, housing, medical issues, mental issues, transport, broadcasting, water, inflation, corruption, and war are all taking place outside the front window and totally and utterly ignored. And the big businesses put people at risk. Oh, they say, oh, blah, 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 blah. BS. I'm sorry, that's what you did last night. That's what you did, and you do all the time. You haven't thought about it because you think that the computer will do the thinking for you. Well, it doesn't. It only puts out what you put in. And what you put in is a bunch of whole nonsense. And it is time to root out computers. It is time for the heavy fines to be placed at the front desk of these companies right away up to the boardroom. It is time for the directors to start to take some responsibility instead of just taking huge pay packets and fees. It is simply not good enough. Our entire system is not fit for purpose. It is not serving what essentially are basically very decent and caring people in this country, but who are being turned into self-adulations, self-concern, anti-neighbor, anti-social beings because of the dickheads we have got in charge of our senior levels of government and of corporate endeavor. Not good enough. Not good enough. And I don't hear any suggestion for reform. Whoa, reform. That's a word that you don't use. You don't use that anywhere near a politician. Reform. What we could do is we could do with about 2/3 locked off their salaries. And any expenses at all, is subject to the same rules and regulations that any business or any individual in this country has to meet with the inland revenue. sorry, I can't get off this morning. I'm totally and utterly appalled at where we are. And yet all we do is we go, oh, dearie me, dearie me. We are a bunch of lemmings. We are a bunch of people who are much more interested in knitting and sitting in the coffee shop than we are with what's going on around us until we are upset. And then we pick up a placard and we march. Or we go and get a food bank going and feel good about it. We've got to get down to the nitty-gritty from the top. Because the way that we're constituted at the moment is the recipe for disaster. People keep saying as well, it's not going to affect me, I won't be here. But, well, I may not be here in 5 years' time, 3 years' time, who knows? I may not be here. But the fact of the matter is, I want to leave some sort of legacy, and I am ashamed of the legacy that I'm leaving. And I can't say to future generations, but it wasn't my generation that did this. On the contrary, those few of us left who were forged in the fires of the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, those few of us left met pretty decent standards, all in all. And what we're actually leaving now in our name is outrageous. And nobody cares about it. Nobody cares about it. They get more excited at the football manager when we lose 4-0 to Hungary. They get more excited about that. I do not like to be tarred with the same brush as the generations that are leading us, or so-called leading us at the moment. They are quite useless. And it must be a generational thing because it's right across the board. It's not just politics. Our politicians are useless. They're so high profile. We know they're useless. But we don't look at the corporate side of things. We don't look at the service side of things. We don't look at the charitable side of things. We don't look at how we are caring for our neighbor. We've abandoned all that, and it's not good enough. It is not good enough. The Times. The PM is under fresh pressure after his ethics advisor quits. Well, having an ethics advisor in Westminster is a contradiction in terms. There are no ethics in Westminster. They're all a bunch of hands in the pockets, snouts in the trough. They do little for the money that we pay them, which is outrageous, and then round on each other when their ethics are worried. Oh, lots of families starving, right? Big increase in mental health. Don't want to do anything about that. A big increase in homeless. We'll pretend to do something about that. Big collapse of the NHS. Well, if we don't say so, it doesn't exist. It is outrageous, outrageous, outrageous. And it is now the 16th of June, 2022. And the 16th of June should be a date to be reckoned with, where we draw a line under all this nonsense, all this silly rubbish. We should draw a line. Deary me. Okay, let's go. The Guardian. The PM under pressure again. A second ethics advisor quits. Well, let a dozen of them quit. Makes no difference to me whatsoever. Ethics advisors are just another person on the payroll to make everybody feel good, and for the ruling classes to persuade us that they have some sort of ethical thoughts. They don't. None. Oh, but he's a very good MP. What you mean is, you know him and he's nice. Nice does not equate with efficiency. Nice often does not equate with efficiency. So if you think and you vote for your MP because he's nice, or because he helped my mother once, forget it. Start to vote for him on the basis of what he's going to do to put right some of these inequities and iniquities in our society. And take that, The Guardian. The Daily Telegraph. Lord Gelt resigns as Johnson's ethics chief. Hey, I wish I'd got sound effects where we could actually cheer. Thank you, Lord Gelt. Good to see the back of you. If I was Boris, I wouldn't even bother to fill his position. I'd leave it. It's a non-starter. Actually, on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, there is a nice photograph of a young lady, and she's in a vineyard. She's in a vineyard, and it all looks terribly nice. I think probably it's to do with the fact that the weather is good. It is, by the way, going to be 24 degrees today. No rain, perhaps a little bit of cloud, but not much. And a light breeze. So all in all, a nice day out there, but be careful about getting sunburned. It can creep up on you. By golly, can it creep up on you? The Metro. The only way is ethics. What? It was reasonable to suggest the Prime Minister may have breached the ministerial code over his Partygate. Oh no, the bloody icing cake again. Here we are, 2 years on from when it happened, and we're still, I'm resigning because I don't think that he behaved in a proper way. For God's sake, get your finger out and do something worthwhile in governance. But since you went and aren't, I'm very happy that you've quit. Go and pick blackberries or whatever. Pick blackberries. I don't think I have some things for these people to do, but that's all they're worth. They couldn't even do that. They wouldn't know how to break through the thorns to get to the blackberries. The Daily Mail. Raab's threat to ignore Euro court rulings. Well, that's the first bit of sense that we've seen. And that's to do with the European court's ruling that we can't send people to Rwanda. And I see nothing wrong with this. Having said that, I know other people are jumping up and down about the ethics of the thing. The fact of the matter is, these are people who arrive on our shores. We have no knowledge of their background. They can mostly be criminals for all we know. But anyway, they then expect us to house and clothe them, while we in fact are struggling to house and clothe our own people. So it seems to me very reasonable is let's not keep them. Let's send them on. But Mr. Ethics, Commissioner, whatever the hell you were, why aren't you asking why these people aren't stopped in France? Why is it we have to try and stop them after a long, dangerous journey? Why aren't they stopped in Germany? Right? What about that, Mr. Ethics Commissioner? What about giving an answer to that? So good, in my opinion, good for Rob to ignore the ruling of judges who are totally remote from us, have no idea what it is that the issue is, and just look at some spurious law. The Daily Express, furious pretty attacks secrecy of the Euro courts. That's something else. Is in all the Brexit things, I took the view that I would like the UK to be part of Europe, but of a workable Europe. And the Europe that we've got, the present EU, is not workable. It is rotten to the core. It's breaking down at every turn because it is in the hands of powermongers, people who want huge power and are prepared to do anything to keep it. And how do they do that? By exactly that, secrecy. If you've ever worked for or with the EU, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's a farce, absolute farce. And yet nobody, we should be part of the European Union. Yeah. It's like sending a mouse into a cage with a python, knowing that it's going to be its supper. We're exactly the same, except we applaud it. Come and eat us. Come and swallow us. The Mirror. Okay, it goes on a different thing. It's please save Beatrix. And it's a plea for a toddler who they donated a heart from a very young child, and then discovered that their existing child needed the same heart. So the paper is taking up the case of the parents who are saying, please save our little girl. Fair enough. The Financial Times, 3/4 point rate rise as the Fed steps up inflation fight. 3/4 of a point is that's quite a lot. That's quite hefty. And at long last, the central banks are beginning to realize that this bout of inflation isn't just a surge. It's there and it needs to be treated. And at least the Fed is doing something. It's only doing what it knows how to do. There's no thinking, no lateral thinking, no creative thinking about other ways to attack inflation. I don't know that there are, but nonetheless, nobody is asking the question. And the Daily Star. Thank God for the Daily Star. It's front pages. Good news alert. Hallelujah. What it says is it reports 2 scientific advances have been made, and boffins are on the verge of creating a pill that can replace exercise. So now we can all sit and watch telly, take a pill, and we've actually run around the block. This is absolutely wonderful, isn't it? They've also revealed that a lager a day is good for you. A glass of lager a day is good for you. Well, that is good news. That's very good news. It's the first time, well, because we've gone through the wine thing about how a glass of wine is good for the heart and all the rest of it. And then people say, no, it's not. And then it leads to alcoholism and all the rest of it. Well, that's the thinking that we've got at the moment. That is the thinking that we've got at the moment. And it's 9:00, and I've had a half hour of perfect bliss, ranting and raving, roaring. Some of my colleagues would say illogically. I don't care. These are issues that I think need to be debated. And if we can help bring them to the public's attention, so much the better. Now we. Oh yes, it is. Let's have a look. No, we're not. We're not getting much out of that. A little bag of tricks. Let's see what we can get out of this little bag of tricks. I think it might be nice for us to remind ourselves about the Battle of Hastings, and that it isn't the Battle of Hastings at all. Let's join our colleagues. Let's join our colleagues in battle who also believe that historians have got it wrong.
My name is Alan Judd, and I'm here to introduce you to the historic market town of Battle. Battle, so named because it was the site of the famous Battle of Hastings in 1066, although it's not in Hastings. We are in fact 6 miles inland from Hastings. And what better place to start to explain the history of what happened here and why than the Battle Museum of Local History, where first of all we'll look at some of the weaponry that was used. Now, one of the most interesting exhibits in the museum, found at the site of the battle, is this axe head, verified as the kind of axe head that was certainly in use at the time. And this is what the axe head would have looked like at the time. This replica was made with the exact same techniques as would have been used in 1066. And this axe would have been used to kill men, but not only men, I'm afraid horses too. The battle and the events leading up to it are very well known, and they are portrayed in the famous Bayeux tapestry, a copy of part of which is on display in the museum. The Bayeux tapestry is not the only tapestry that tells us about the Battle of Hastings, and indeed its aftermath. A much more modern one was produced recently by local volunteers and visitors to the town. That tells us about the foundation of the town from after the battle in October 1066 to the founding of St Mary's Church in 1115. This is Natasha Williams, English Heritage's property manager for properties in Sussex. She's going to tell us how the battle came to be fought here and what happened. Natasha, why here? Why was the battle fought here? Why do we have the abbey here?
The story starts with Edward the Confessor, who was king at the start of 1066. He died in January and he didn't have an heir, so it left a vacuum for the Kingdom of England. Multiple contenders who wanted the throne. This went on for pretty much the whole year and then culminated in October with the Battle of Hastings. This is what we term as the battlefield now. Now you've got to remember, at the time there were no buildings here. The landscape has changed a lot and it would have been over this whole area. the daffodils would not have been here. It wouldn't have been this bright, sunny day, as obviously it was in October. So the landscape would have changed quite dramatically.
So can you tell us exactly what happened and where?
So we're now standing on what is known as Senlac Hill. This is the site of the battle, and as you can see, the slope here is very important to what happened. You can see a little bit of a slope now, but you just need to imagine it went a lot further up because they levelled off the hilltop when they built the abbey. So this is the spot that Harold chose to stand against William. William was coming from the coast, and Harold knew that he would be making his way to London. So he picked out this hillside because it was the perfect place to defend, and William had to come past it. He effectively surprised William because William didn't expect Harold to be here quite this quickly. So at the top of the hill, Harold formed his shield wall, and all he had to do was hold that shield wall until William arrived and the battle continued.
Can you tell us a little more about the shield wall, what exactly it was and how it happened?
The Saxon shield wall was a traditional Saxon tactic for warfare. They'd used it numerous times before, and it was generally very successful. They would pick their battleground, so top of the hilltop, the Saxon army would have spread out, probably about a mile long, all standing with their shields in front of them, and they formed a very formidable defence. All they had to do was stay at the top of that hill. William was at the bottom. His challenge was making his way up the hill, bearing in mind they had all their armour on, they were carrying extremely heavy weapons. It was enough of a feat just to make it to the top, let alone try and fight anyone with that wall in front of you.
Natasha, can you describe to us what happened that day in October 1066 on this spot?
You have to use your imagination. So 14th of October 1066, you had Harold's Saxon army at the top of the hill, and you had the Norman army at the bottom. Saxons with their shield wall, the Normans raring to go to come up, but it was a bit of a standstill. Etiquette of battle, who would go first? Now, one of William's jesters, a gentleman named Taillefer, rode his horse in the middle of the two lines, shouting songs, mocking the Saxons, a bit of warfare cries beforehand, and one of the Saxon army archers got a bit excited and shot him, which was effectively the start of the battle. The Normans rushed forwards. All the Saxons had to do was stand firm with their shield wall, and the Normans rushed up the hill but couldn't get anywhere. And this happened a couple of times before William realised they had to change their tactics. He came up with a plan. He got a couple of his troops to rush forwards, but then retreat, acting fearful. He did this a couple of times until the Saxons got excited. They thought that they were winning, they'd made a breakthrough. The Norman army was retreating, and they followed them down the hill, effectively breaking the shield wall. And this was the turning point for William. He was able to now come round the back of them and attack them from multiple sides. Once the shield wall had been broken, the Norman army were more powerful, they had more improved weaponry, and they hadn't just fought a battle up in York like the Saxons had. So it was only a matter of time before the battle was decided.
We can say then that it all ended here. Harold was killed. We'd have been surrounded by blood and gore and bodies and goodness knows what else at this spot.
Yes, well, should we go have a look? This is said to be the spot where Harold was killed. The high altar of the abbey was placed here specifically to commemorate that. Now, when he was killed, his body was so badly mutilated that they had to bring in his wife to identify it later on. And William he was very religious, so he wanted to build something on the site to give penance to all the blood that had been shed. Hence the reason that this Benedictine monastery was built on this very site.
And so the town of Battle grew up around the abbey, around this?
Yes. Yeah, where the Benedictine monks couldn't sustain themselves, they needed craftspeople, skilled labourers to come and help them establish community here, which is how the town grew up around the abbey. And they even built the church that you see in the background here as a place for the townspeople to worship.
And we'll be going into that church in a later instalment.
Every year, on the weekend nearest the 14th of October, English Heritage holds a reenactment of Battle of Hastings here on site. It involves reenactors from not only England but Europe as well. We get people coming in from Normandy, and it attracts thousands of visitors from all over the world who come specifically to see the reenactments. It's a great event. Not only is there the battle, there's weaponry demonstrations and living history, so you get to see people as they were in 1066.
Well, there we go with a history lesson. Where are we? Who are we? What makes us? And the little town of Battle is just gorgeous. It's just lovely. Tucked away just a few miles from Hastings. It's got several nice pubs, a couple of decent shops, and very much into the morning coffee shop, where you see the local people, all of whom know one another, come and have a little chat. I spent a very happy weekend there. Before lockdown really got tucked in too far, and that's one of the things that I'm afraid that our signal again is not good today. I've got Max working on it so that we can get over this hump, because it is a bit of a nonsense that we can't get our decent programs going. But there we are. Now, yes, the battle. Well worthwhile paying a visit to. You can get there on the train easily enough too. You can go to St Leonard's Warrior Square and catch a train for King's Cross or something like that. And it's about the 4th station along. A slight walk into town, but not too bad. It might test me nowadays, but it didn't in the past. And I used to enjoy going there a great deal. What can we expect in terms of the weather? Well, I think that it's time for us to understand that the weather is going to be very hot for the rest of this week. No let up. And I must say that I've spent most of it inside, so I haven't realized just how hot it is outside. But the usual things apply. Is because we don't see enough sun, what we do is we throw caution to the winds, and we find that we get sunburned. And it's difficult for us to. It's difficult for us to remember just how painful some of those sunburn things can be. So do be careful. On the side of caution. Now, hopefully, what we'll see a little later in the day, a little later into this program, is Jane Watkins will join us from Hastings and let us know what's going on there. And we put out a tentative communications line to Andrew Sloan, our barber correspondent, a lovely, lovely man who is spending the week in New York. And if, of course, it's right now, it's 5 o'clock in the morning there. If they actually wake up or they've got jet lag, perhaps they'll see the email with a link saying, come on, join us, and we'll be able to have a chat with them. If not, so be it. But right now, I would like to do what we normally do about now, is just to take a breather, is let's go down to the park. Let's go down to the park today. Teddy bears picking. I like to think of that as our own version of the potter's wheel. Those people who are younger than I am will perhaps not remember the potter's wheel. When broadcasting first started, telebroadcasting first started in the United Kingdom, they didn't have the discipline or understand the need for discipline of programs being a specific length. So you would get perhaps a movie of an hour and a half, a drama of 45 minutes, and some of them are for 46 and a half minutes. And all these need to be put together in a broadcast day. So the buffer between programs were a number of things. But the two that I remember specifically is, first of all, a high-speed movie taken in the front cab of a railway train from Brighton to London, or vice versa, London to Brighton. And it was done in 4 minutes. The actual length of the journey is about 60 minutes. But this movie put it down to about 4 minutes. It was terrific. But the potter's wheel was it was indeterminate. I think it must have been about 10 minutes long, but could be cut off whenever. And it shows a pot being forged from clay on the potter's wheel, being shaped and moistened and so on and so forth. And this was meant to act as a break, because remember, certainly no commercials, but in many instances, not really much in terms of promos. Not much in terms of promos and promotion in those days. And actually, they didn't need it. It was only BBC One. They didn't even call it BBC One. I think it was just BBC. And that was it. Everything was thrown into the pot. And one shape didn't fit all. So the potter's wheel and and London to Brighton in 4 minutes. There were others. I can't remember them, and I really must look them up, because I think that they were just delightful things. I mean, television in the early days did have delightful things. It was smoke and mirrors. I can remember once when I was working at Ulster Television that there was a program. It was either a ghost story or a killer story or whatever. And the way that things were put onto the screen, like the name of the movie, John Wayne Inn, was through a card done in the art department, and it went into something called a scanner. It was just really a frame, and there was a little camera just about a foot away, but it made it fill the screen, and it looked as if it was a large poster, if you like, yeah. And one night, the engineers were feeling a bit frisky, and they decided that they should really make this killer movie is in the break look a bit more dramatic. And so they actually took some toilet paper, tissues, and they lit it and held it up between the scanner, in other words, the piece of art, and the camera. So it gave the impression of flames and so on. And that was how things were done. It's not this electronic stuff, press button A, press button B. That's how the television got by. And in those days, we did do some interesting things because we had to. There wasn't the huge technology, barrel load of technology to use in those days. We had to make do. Now, it is 23 minutes past, I think. It's 23 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock. Yes, 23 minutes past 9 o'clock. That first hour goes so quickly, you know. I don't know why it goes so quickly, but it does. And this first hour, break an egg, is only 60 minutes long. But what we might well do is we might well just hang on today and say to you, toodle pip, but stay with you on that same channel and resume after that. I'll give that a try to see what might happen. Anyway, this morning's news is really about ethics. So ethics, with one or two little side issues, but is just how pompous and strutting how leaders, whether they be politicians or the civil service, can get is beyond the pale. I just can't believe it. And yet they take one another seriously, really seriously. This is a civil service, by the way, that still insists that its members should be able to work for 4 days at home and 1 day going into the office. Yes, I know. That's the way things are, I'm afraid. Have we got anything else that we can share for the last 6 minutes? I don't know. Let's take a look. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Let's take a look at this. There is no sound, unfortunately, but it is a dramatic look, a different look of how we see this. There we are. That's a different view of Lewis, isn't it? Indeed it is. This is Mirador Television, broadcasting from the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, East Sussex. We're an experimental channel, I suppose, really. Yeah, we do a bit of it, and we try to follow on. And now we almost always take a break. We didn't. Do it, and we seem to have lost now. Oh, there we go. We've got it back. Why? I have no idea. We have to see if make sure. Well, we'll make sure in this little break that that everything is in terms of power. That certainly would make it. But so we're coming up to 9:29. It is the 16th day. It is Thursday, the 16th of June, 2022, and where we are and what we're doing is basking in certainly a summer. May only be a summer for a week, but we're basking in a summer, and it's rather nice to enjoy these sort of days. And when you think about it, is whatever the weather, it's only a memory, isn't it? Anyway. All right, so I'm going to see whether I can find something that. Now here we go. We've got Jane with us. That's wonderful. So let us take just a little bit. What should we play here? Just. To fill in the time. Oh, I know this one. I love this one.
Well done, the energy companies. They're full of bright ideas to help their customers. Now they've made power so expensive that for an average house such as this, you can't afford to heat it. So you don't need appliances such as this. But that means you also don't need a fridge, because you can keep your groceries cool and fresh without it. The house is cold enough. Well done, chaps.
And good morning, Jane Watkins.
Hello, how are you?
This morning, Jane.
Sorry?
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I might last the day with any luck at all.
Yes, don't expire in the heat. It's very
Absolutely. Yes, but you're looking bronzed and beautiful, and I'm looking white and pasty because I haven't been out in it at all.
Well, I haven't
Right.
actually either, but I try and stay out of the sun these days. But
Yeah, me too. Yeah, very much so. Right. Okay. Now Jane is our resident co-host on a Thursday, and she is located in um,
Hastings.
Hastings. Yes, I do know I got battle on the brain at the moment.
Oh, what's happening?
Well, we're losing your picture, Jane, for some reason.
No, I don't know why. Hang on.
There
Sorry.
we go. Yeah, we're there. Give us a little view of what's happening in Hastings, how it's handling the weather. I would have thought, being a resort, that it is welcoming this sort of weather, that there are tons of people coming in wanting an ice cream and a walk along the pier.
Yes, I mean, actually, I'm going on the train shortly to London, and the note on the Southeast website was that trains to Hastings and other coastal towns are going to be really busy because of the sort of short heat wave. I think the only good thing about Hastings, Bournemouth was on the news last night, is that it never gets overcrowded. But obviously people have got to be mindful of going in the sea because it's still incredibly cold. Although, the air temp, sitting on the beach is hot. So just a slight warning to people to be careful if they're actually going in the sea, and to check the tides as well, because obviously it's, lunchtime. Well, every day the times obviously change slightly. I did have a look because I was going to go in the sea tomorrow. So high tide tomorrow is about 1 o'clock, which is about the best time to be in the sea before the tide starts going out, because there's a rip tide along Hastings, along the coast as well. So you could get swept out. So, but certainly come down, get some fish and chips and lots of ice cream. And there's a little fair there's little swans, so you can go on a little paddle boat ride, and there's lots to do.
Well, I was going to ask you, are there any dangers of that strip of coast?
Yes.
If you've got a riptide.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a women's group, swimming group, and last week there was a talk by the lifeguards about the riptides, and kind of, it doesn't make us all scared, but it just makes you more aware of the sea, because the undercurrents. So you kind of think, like, today they're all about to meet and go swimming, saying it's like a mill pond, but you have the undercurrents that you don't see that can easily, if you're not a strong swimmer, can easily be swept out. Yeah. Obviously we've got the brilliant, the amazing, the RNLI here. We've got the lifeboat station for the offshore boat, and we've got the onshore, the ribs that go along the coast for people in trouble on the coast as well. So that's good to have. The RNLI, they do a great service, and if anybody's
one of the things that I always think of in Hastings is you've got a funicular railway, haven't you?
Yeah, we've got 2 cliff lifts. We've got the steepest cliff lift in the United Kingdom, built during Queen Victoria's reign. So there's that one on I've got to think now. The East Hill is the steepest one. It's external. You can see it, a bit like the ones they have on Bournemouth Beach. You can see it, and then we've got another one which goes under the rocks, under the cliff, as well. So you can only access it from the old town, and then it goes underground onto the West Hill. So the steepest one they use a lot in the. Do you remember the program Foyle's War? The Second World War, detective program that was filmed in Hastings, but it did get struck by lightning a couple of years ago. It was out of action, but they have renovated it. And then once it was renovated, they had a Foyle's War parade. They brought some of the Foyle's War cars down to reopen the cliff lift. So obviously you have to pay to go on that. It's a few pounds, but it's worth a little trip. It's really sweet, very old-fashioned, little wooden truck.
I love the old town in Hastings. It's a nice backwater, and you find little pubs with notices in sort of, knock on the door and we might come and serve you.
Yeah, there's loads of pubs. There's absolutely loads of pubs loads of pubs, loads of live music now, which is all picking up again. So there's entertainment in most of the pubs, actually. Generally Wednesday night, Thursday night, Saturday night, Sunday lunchtime, you can find some live music in the Old Town. There's loads going on.
Now, what about events? Any specific events we should keep our eyes open for?
Yes, I've got this one here. Where's the camera? Which way? That way. Can you see that? Which way?
Yes. Yes.
So Hastings Fringe, Comedy Fringe, the 15th to the 19th. So it started in June. So this is just the Comedy Fringe. We have a Fringe theatre in a few weeks' time as well. So in this little booklet, I'll do it again. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Up.
Yes.
Loads, tells you all the venues. There's probably about 10 gigs a day. Let me have a look. Today, it's Thursday, isn't it? So today, all starting tonight at 7:30 at the Good Place. There's something at the Albion, the Piper, the Jenny Lind. Some more at the Piper, the old pump house in the Old Town. The Piper is in St Leonard's, so lots of comedians: Adele Cliff, Pope Lonergan, Tony Law, Jake Lambert, Russell Arathon. So that's tonight. So if you like comedy, go and have a listen. And then the same again tomorrow. Different events, different locations tomorrow. Electric Palace, which is the old cinema in the Old Town. The Nest, the Crypt. Carries on Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. So if you like comedy and you like stand-up comedy, come down and
right.
Listen.
Do you still have things like Punch and Judy on the seafront?
In fact, my neighbour across the road, he's a Punch and Judy man, and he has got all the the original the puppets. He's a puppeteer. He was actually. I went to a fete last Saturday, and he was at the garden fete in the church. He was doing an event. So yeah, we do have them. Yeah, they are around. Yeah. Next week we've got the 26th, Tuesday in the Fisherman's Club. We've got Leanne Carroll, who's quite a well-known jazz singer. She's singing with Soundwaves Choir at the Fisherman's Club. So if anybody wants to go to that, you have to get in touch with me, because we have to put your name on the guest list in order to get in, because it's a members club normally. That's at the Fisherman's Club. That's on the Tuesday, the 26th of June at 7:30. And then on the 28th of June in Hastings Museum up the road, they have a Help the Refugee Day. So there's loads going on for that. And I'll be singing, because we sang a song for the Jubilee, one song, and we're going to do a reprise and sing up at the museum for the Refugee Day, which is the Saturday. What day is it? The 28th? Or is it the 29th? I can't think. Saturday, all day from 12 o'clock till 7. There's events at Hastings Museum, which is a beautiful museum as well.
Now, you say we. Is this a choir?
At the Refugee Day, yes, I'm part of Barefoot Opera, operatic group led by Jenny Miller, that we did the Bloom Britannia. But this project is actually funded by another company, and but just some of the singers that were in the Bloom Britannia opera last October. But yeah.
Right. So how many of you in the chorus?
About 20. About 20, and 3 professional opera singers as well. So that's we're just doing one song. We walked around the town for the Jubilee Saturday. We sang in the town centre a couple of times, and then we had this massive statue of the Queen with a big papier-mâché head walking around. So I'm glad the Queen made it to Hastings for the Jubilee.
Now, you said you were going up to London on the train. I'm not quite sure which route you take, whether you take southeastern or whether you or southern, or whether you take the other one that goes through Battle and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm going on the southeast to Charing Cross, but I did check, because obviously they're striking, aren't they, next week?
Yes.
So I thought that's really going to. But today, hopefully, it's fine today. I think there's 3 days next week. They've said on the news that they're striking. So
right, yes, I think it's the 21st 22nd. But one of the stories in the papers this morning is that it will be a 6-day strike. I mean, it's all very well for the rail unions to say, well, we do it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But the trouble is, they just leave the trains where they are on the Monday night, and there's nobody really until Tuesday morning to try and put them into place. So it's utter chaos. So I think next week is going to be dreadful. But I'm glad that you're not cut off this week.
I mean, I could totally appreciate, they've got their, what they want to achieve, but I feel it's always a shame they can't sit around a table and bash it out rather than, stop trains, so many hundreds of people, thousands of people trying to get to work to do, a decent day's work.
Yes.
We've been hemmed in enough, with COVID and everything now to think that people can't get into London or wherever they're going to work. Right. So, they're just inconveniencing the public at large, basically. And I think that's a shame. I think that's a real shame that they can't work it out, in another way.
Yes, I agree with you. When I was I lived in British Columbia, the Prime Minister, or the Premier, W.A.C. Bennett, was returned each year or each 4 years as the Prime Minister, despite the fact that in the papers it would seem as if nobody was going to support him. And he used to beam at the cameras when he was elected and say, nobody loves us except the people. And it seems to me that the trade unions are the same, is that, we love absolutely everything but people. And they are supposed to be representing people. Let's face it, the workers are all part of us. So I find it a very strange philosophy. But there we are. Okay, let me ask you to review a couple of things that are in the headlines. First of all, we're into, I've been sneering heavily into ethics of any sort in Westminster. But one of the Prime Minister's ethics advisors has quit. And so everybody now is, the ethics advisor has quit. My own view is ethics, Westminster, ho, ho, ho. But you see, I'm an old cynic. I'm an old curmudgeon. But a bright young thing like you, what's your view of that situation in Westminster?
I haven't heard that yet. So what were his reasons for leaving?
Well, because he thinks that I think that the Prime Minister has not been totally honest about things.
Right. Okay. Well, I suppose it's all pressure on Boris, isn't it? I mean, there's pressure all over the place. And again, I kind of think, love him or hate him, I mean, he's done a fair job. And, I was watching the news last night and thinking, okay, well, politicians, they're human beings as well. They make mistakes just like everybody else. But I just wish they'd really get on with, policies and things that need addressing instead of the tit
well
for
done.
tat.
Well
the tit
done.
for tat. I will push Boris out, and then because somebody else wants the position, but then who else will do
exactly
a greater job? Who knows? But I just think get on with the issues. We're heading. Could be heading for a really big recession this winter with the fuel, the petrol costs, the energy, like you've just shown on that advert. It could be a complete calamity, and then they're just, worrying about Boris. Yes, he has. COVID. He made some big mistakes without a doubt. But get on with the issues that need addressing very seriously. I mean, I feel even personally, I have to drive some distance most days for work that I'm constantly. It takes it takes a few seconds to put, say, £10 of petrol in the car now, and I feel that my car is eating fuel. I mean, I'm not one of those people. I can't afford to fill it up. It would be well over £100, so I can't afford to do it in a big chunk like that. And now they're saying a lot of people are driving away from the pumps. People aren't paying. People are running out of petrol. We need these issues need addressing, not whether Okay, they're all intelligent people in Parliament. They can deal with the ethics, I'm sure.
Well, it is you are in total line. I mean, we don't have any editorial policy in this on this station. It's a fairly free view station. People can express what they feel like, but in fact, if you like, if there's any policy at all, it's what I say, and I have been saying exactly what you've been saying right now. Why don't you get on with solving some of the numerous issues that we've got? And everybody seems to have forgotten that we're at war too. I mean, to all intents.
I know.
Is because of an iced cake at Christmas, a quarter bottle of champagne, and in the case of the opposition, a pint of beer and a curry. I mean, to me, these things have got out of all proportion. I want my MPs to actually get stuck in, and what we pay them for is to try and address some of these issues.
Exactly.
They really they're not doing it, and I have my own thoughts about the level of competence of Parliament. I am not overconfident in it. Let's put it this way, and I'm sometimes quite vocal about it.
Well, it's too much time. It's too much tit for tat, isn't it? Time of like, well, we do a better job than, like you say, having the confidence for them to just get on with whatever they're all meant to be getting on with. I mean,
absolutely, yeah. But I think some of them, the way that we have our MP selected is a bit silly nowadays. Ratios and actually, it is amusing in many ways, because the boast is, anybody can stand for Parliament. That's how democratic we are, which, if I may say so, is a bunch of BS. The only way you really stand a chance of getting into Parliament is by joining a party, becoming an activist, hoping like hell that you will be selected for some voting area or other. It is not. It's a closed shop. Those people that are selected are those people who have been running around for years, looking after the nuts and bolts of the local constituency association. So it is not democratic, and actually we pay the price. We don't have the best people, but nonetheless, that's my point of view. Right. Let's just look at the couple of papers there with ethics, but the Daily Mail's headline is that Raab's threat to ignore Euro court rulings. Now, this came out of the blue, I think, this morning. Dominic Raab is saying, okay, the European Court of Justice or whatever has ruled that we can't do this and we can't do that. And I think what he's saying is, hey, listen, we Brexited, so why are we listening to these people? I'm not quite sure what the legal position is.
I think that's a separate issue, isn't it, to the coming out of the EU with Brexit. Right? What I understood last night is that the European Court, it kind of runs parallel. So we are still involved in that, and we should be sort of following that. But I mean, this is to do with the Rwanda flight, I
yes,
presume.
it is. Yeah.
So Boris now last night said he was going to try and change the law for these flights to go to Rwanda. So I believe we are tied in. We are still tied in with that, although we have Brexited. It's a separate department, if you like, isn't it?
I mean, it's difficult to know what we're governed by and what we're not now, isn't it? I mean,
because I think the general public would probably think, well, we Brexited and we're not part of Europe. Why are they, controlling what we're doing? But I think we are still part of that European law, from what I understood last night with the news.
Well, you may well be right, and I understand the query.
I'm not sure if there's a time frame though. Is there? There might be a time frame on it. I mean, I can't believe that ad infinitum going forward will be part of that. Maybe there's a time frame.
Well, it could be. I mean, It's a bit like, as you point out, get rid of Boris. Who are you going to replace him with?
Well, I know this is.
The poor guy has been through fire. When you think about it,
He has, and he's still smiling.
If he had actually sat down and made a list of all the things that he would face as prime minister, I'm quite sure he would have thrown the list into the wastepaper basket, gone down to the pub, and said, I quit before I even start.
I admire him for his tenacity. He's hanging on in there. I'd sort of, I'd admire him for that, because I think a lot of politicians probably would have just said, "Okay, I quit." But the thing is, as well, what I think is, with all these other people insisting he quits, who are they? Do you know what I mean? The next thing they make a mistake. I mean, I don't. It's
Can't
just
wait.
it's like skittle tattle, isn't it? Oh yeah, okay. It's like Skittles, right?
Yes,
He's down, right? Who's next? But none of us are perfect, and Boris certainly isn't perfect. But he's had a lot of challenges. He's had a lot of challenges to deal with.
He never was. I knew a chap who was a senior executive, if you like, in Brussels, the EC, the EU, and he said when Boris was a journalist and covering the EU, he would come in and say, "Is it true that you're actually going to cancel building a rail line from A to B and so on and so forth?" It was never an issue, Boris. It was never an issue. So then his headline would be the next day is EU denies that. And it's a good old catch-all, which most journalists would be afraid to use, but not Boris. He used all those things. Now, the one thing that Priti Patel, who is not everybody's cup of tea, is in which paper is this? Is in the Daily Express. She has attacked the secrecy of Euro courts. And my view is that not just Euro courts, but one of the things that, and having worked for the EU and with the EU and so on in our days when we were in it, is secrecy was something that really, everything seemed very furtive. Everybody was terribly afraid of saying anything that might be controversial. So everybody sort of closed shop on themselves. Do you get that feeling that there is a lot of secrecy in the old EU? I say the old EU just because we're not part of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, well, maybe that's why. That's, they're not sort of, as though, we're not part of it. So they're not going to want to share
stuff.
Policies. They're not going to want to share it with us now, particularly, are they? I mean, I don't.
No, quite.
So, maybe it's to do with that. I mean, I'm sure when we were involved in it, they knew a lot more. I don't. It's a secret to do with what? With trade, trade or what they're doing. We're not part of it now, so they can't have it both ways, I suppose.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about sort of a pre-Brexit. I never felt easy about the way that the EU was constituted. In fact, one of my favorite quotes is from Mikhail Gorbachev, who, despite the fact that he was a Russian communist, was a man of some considerable substance and thought. And he said, one of the big puzzles of my political life is to understand the speed with which European politicians are racing to recreate the old Soviet Union. I thought that way it was very perceptive.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Going on to now is the Daily Mirror has latched onto a story where it's quite interesting in as much as some young child, very young child, donated their heart almost at birth to the donor program, and the heart was used. And now the sister, who is about 6, finds that her heart is failing and needs a heart. And the father rightly is saying, he's not showing any resentment that they gave the heart away. But what he is saying is, having gone through this whole thing, I realize just how difficult it is to get a heart or to get any sort of organ. And I think we do tend to sort of think is, oh, yes, there's modern technology. We can do these things. We use pig's bladders. And all you've got to do is really go down to the NHS store and say, can I have a couple of hearts, please? But they're saying really that this is a heartfelt plea because this poor guy is seeing his second daughter and he realizes just how tough it is to get through these things. I sort of do approve of these sort of stories because they show the human side of a lot of inhumanity. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, they do highlight it, and I think that people maybe don't think about it. I mean, I'm on the donor. I've got a donor card. That you can get a little card and say what you can register. Which organs you're happy to donate. I mean, whether they'll be any good, but I am on the. I've got a donor card, and I think I think a few people have. Whether I don't know. It's difficult speaking to the majority of the population, but unless you're involved in something like that, or somebody who's has that terrible issue of trying to find, do people think about it? Is it promoted enough? Is there enough advertising, to urge people to donate? Because people die at all ages and for all sorts of reasons. Maybe in theory we should have a much bigger bank of organs. I don't know the figures, what percentage of, how many organs they get from people annually. But here, let's give it a plug and say, really, you can go onto the website for organ donation. It's just a case of filling out a form. You don't have to donate everything. I think, the organs that you're happy to donate. And you have a little card, like a credit card you can keep in your purse. If something happens, they can find that. And I wish them the best of luck. I really hope that somebody, because the other issue is it has to be compatible as well, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So,
everybody has to be tested very carefully.
Exactly.
You got the same blood type and so on and so forth.
And bodies reject as well, don't they? They can reject organs from somebody else. So
yes, that's right, they can. But you actually raise a very good point, Jane, because I know that there are various things that if you go into hospital, I was in the other day to have a cataract removed, and you sign, this form and that form and so on and so forth. But they do have on the bottom, if you wish to donate an organ, etc., this is how you do it. But, I don't recall really seeing much else, whether it be television advertising or promotion or, people. People are very happy to go and collect for a food bank. Not so much to walk the streets to say, donate your heart. Is there any reason for that?
I don't know how I did it in the first place. I don't know whether there was, somebody standing in the street sort of with a little stand saying, would you donate? Or was it, sometimes you see the posters, you do see the posters in hospitals and GP surgeries, but it's not something I think I'd see on a bus, for example, advertising on a bus or a train line. But I can't say, maybe they have, so I don't want to say you never see them because these things are probably periodic. But the thing is now with social media, even if you have something on a social media site, it circulates very fast. That's probably the way to go, isn't it? Then
Yes.
a billboard poster, perhaps, or as well as. So yeah,
Well,
I mean, I've had my donor card for years, and I don't even think I did it before I moved to Hastings, probably in Surrey. You know, it's something everyone can do, and then not really think about it, because you're not going to be alive anyway.
no,
I said, don't take my eyes, because I still want to be able to see, which is ridiculous.
I always think of myself as being like Mad Jack Fuller. Somewhere there will be a pyramid with me sitting at a table with my glass of wine and my, well, in my case, oysters in front of me, looking at the door, daring anybody to come in and move me.
Yeah.
Now, the Financial Times it brings us back to reality, because apparently the U.S. Federal Reserve, or the American Central Bank, has put up interest rates by 3 points, and I mean that's quite since they normally do it in a quarter at a time. To do 3 quarters is quite a substantial jump, which makes me think that the Fed is getting more alarmed about inflation than everybody has shown so far. In fact, it's gone out of the news. I don't know what inflation is. The last I knew was it was 9%, nudging on 10.
Yeah.
But what sort of effect do you think that you've seen from inflation? And is it something that is bothering, the people that you talk to on a daily basis?
Well, I think it will, yes. I mean, it's going to affect all sorts of things, isn't it? Mortgage rates, rentals, other food prices hikes. I just think we're heading for quite, for hardship. I just think, even people are talking now, do they eat or do they put the heating on? Another interest hike, excuse me, it's not going to do anybody any good. I can just see a winter recession heading, but that sounds a bit gloomy. But
no, I think that you're right. I mean, there are a number of things. Energy prices, as you know, we've got Stuart Dalby every Wednesday, and yesterday they went to town. I mean, Stuart thinks that it's a combination of past government stupidity and the avarice of the energy companies, but he doesn't see any easing of it.
Well, I think that the big problem is the biggest job people could go for now is debt management, because people are going to get so into debt. I mean, I spoke to a friend who, pays all his electricity on a pay-as-you-go card. I mean, he said £10 a week, which to me sounds like a very small amount, but is in a small flat. And, he's saying, well, I can't afford to have a shower now, or I can't, because then I can't cook a meal. That's kind of, it's serious. We're going to head in for being a sort of third world country almost.
You're absolutely right. And one of the things that, once again, I mean, before you joined me this morning, I was on one of my rants. And my rant really was that we've got a generation of people who don't know what the hell they're doing, and they're in charge of everything. But the central banks normally keep a very, very close eye on inflation and move quite quickly to calm it. But in this case, I mean, it suddenly went from virtually 0 to 10. And it was only then that the banks started to react. And even now they've reacted in a very mild way. I just wonder whether, in fact, it's this lack of awareness, or whether they know something that we don't, and that inflation is going to sort of slip down the ladder again. But it certainly is very worrying, and particularly when the one of the biggest central banks in the world, the Fed, moves, and actually the Fed, Federal Reserve in the United States, is very loath to move. It's one of the last of the central banks to put in place these sort of calming things, a rate rise. So that makes me think that if it's, and particularly, I mean, 3 points doesn't sound very much, but in terms of mass finance, it's huge.
Well, it'll stop people, over time, people stop shopping again. They'll stop going out to restaurants and bars. I mean, all the places that were hit with COVID are going to be hit again because people are not going to have disposable income, or they're going to have credit cards and they're going to have huge debt problems, So then that's going to be the next, how people are going to deal with that. Anyway, I have to love you and leave you because I have to get a train at 10:30.
Oh, right. Okay. What is it now? 10:07.
10:10.
Okay. Well, off you rush, and you'll join us each Thursday at least throughout until the end of July. But then hopefully what we'll do is we'll get you on, even if it has to be another day. But I'd love to have you co-host because you're a breath of fresh air. You take on an old curmudgeon like me and put me in my place. But also, we're quite keen for you to restart one of the programs that you did for us before. Because they are very popular and very intriguing. And if I may say so, you're a bloody good broadcaster, and we're delighted to have you with us.
Thank you.
Go and catch your train.
Yes.
Enjoy your day in London. Remember us.
It's very hot. It's so hot. Well, have a good day, and I'll speak to you soon.
Okay. Bye, Jane.
Bye. Bye.
Right, there we are. Jane Watkins and Our Lady in Hastings, and with some very good comments, I think. Now, what we did do there, we didn't take our break at 9:30 again because interesting things started just then. It's 10:09. Let's just go down to the park again, and then perhaps what we'll do is we will take a little break. Although I'm a bit loath to break the link, simply because if Andrew Sloan Now, what I did was let's see if we can. Well, doesn't want to play. We should be able to improve the image, but I actually got so carried away this morning that I didn't drink my coffee. It is, to say the least, only lukewarm, but nonetheless, dear Jane and Shannon were here this morning, and they, as usual, greeted me with their wonderful smiles. And the coffee appears, and it's very nice that it does as well. But I need to, so I actually have the little swig there. The Potter's Wheel, our Potter's Wheel, is that park that we go to is a very historic park. For those people who don't know Lewes, is it was part of the Newton family's garden, if you like, and the Newton family are one of the leading families here from 1500 or so. The mansion that you see in that video was built from the stones used to build Lewes Priory, which was vandalized by Henry VIII and Thomas Cromwell at the time of the dissolution of the monasteries, which was right around 1530, 1540. The good citizens of Lewes, being the good citizens that they were, and particularly since they were Puritan and full of righteousness, went and stole much of the material from the priory and built their own buildings with what they could purloin. So in fact, much of nearly all of the mansion in that park is built from the old Lewes Priory, a priory which was they started to build in about 1079 thereabouts, and it must be some memorial that the foundations are still standing in 2022, having been first started to be put up. Actually, I think it was almost a decade earlier. I think that the original idea of the monastery or the priory was started in 1069. So it's quite remarkable that we have and are able to look at this mansion house in this beautiful park and see part of history that takes us back well over 1,000 years and a quarter. To all intents and purposes. So that's how some of the houses were built in that medieval period. It's now used as council offices, which to me is sort of tragic because it could be done it could be used to explain history. Why that particular house is not used, I don't know, because there's a mansion nearby, an old Tudor mansion called Anne of Cleves House, which was part of the divorce settlement that Henry VIII gave to Anne of Cleves, who he was said to have described as that there's no way that he could get into bed with somebody who was so ugly. And actually, Thomas Cromwell paid with his head because he was the king's favourite. He was charged with finding a wife, and Henry, who realised that he would not necessarily have to go the love path, but that he would need to marry to preserve the dynasty, to preserve his heritage and have an heir. It still wanted which was a lady that would fill his bed comfortably, and she wasn't. So anyway, Anne of Cleves House, But it is used as a museum as well as you can go and take a look in it and see what a Tudor house was like. It is thought that Anne of Cleves never actually lived in it. It was part of a settlement, a divorce settlement. And the estates in those days were huge, absolutely huge. So we've got a little bit of history in both ends of the Tudors and the medieval period. Not bad going. Now, I think what we will do is at 10:17, yes, we'll take our 10-minute break and then we'll come back at about 10:30 and do a late half hour up until 11 o'clock before saying toodle pip. So for the moment, let's say goodbye, but we're not very far away.